What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is MrHurriicane, and we have some info now on Madden 21 for Next Gen on PS5 and Xbox Series X. And I wanted to talk about it a little bit and give you kind of my expectations, I guess. But I was wondering when they'd finally start to talk about what's coming next gen. We know what's coming out early December. Although the release date's kind of irrelevant for me, at least. I can't get my hands on a console. I've tried multiple times, and it's nice having a console in your cart. You're trying to get to the end, and that PS5 is long gone by the time you even get to the finish line there. So no luck yet, and if I don't get one ordered here in the next few days, I imagine I won't have one for the release of Madden 21. Because I would like to see what is coming to next gen, and I want a PS5 anyway, so it'd be nice to check it out when it's new and everything and see if I can make some content, because some of this next gen stat stuff they're talking about sounds cool. Now, they didn't show us a lot, and that leads me to have some lower expectations because first of all, this dual entitlement, they're not charging you an additional copy of the game or an upgrade fee. If you have the PS4 version or the Xbox One version, you're able to upgrade whether you're digital or physical. So they're not charging you. And in general, if you're getting something for free or at no additional cost, you should have low expectations immediately. Don't set yourself up to be disappointed. And always keep in mind how the first version of Madden on the Xbox 360 was. Madden 06, not a very good game, very bare bones. The gameplay was not what people wanted. And Madden 25 kicked off the PS4, Xbox One era, and that game was not, this great gameplay experience. It was very rough from an animation and player movement standpoint. I expect this launch to be smoother and very similar to the PS4 and Xbox One version of Madden 21, mainly because, from my knowledge, it's the same engine, and I think that, the difference in developing games for last gen versus this gen is probably not as much of a shift as prior generations and the movements to newer generations. So the next gen stats is what they have been touting here for Madden 21 on next gen. Alongside this information, they released a Madden 21 next gen trailer, and it's just the classic EA trailer. You've seen one, you've seen them all. Flashy animations, the works, no raw gameplay, no HUD. So I'm not going to talk a lot about the trailer except for the wording they used at the very beginning, which is, "Welcome to the most realistic NFL simulation ever." And that doesn't mean a lot to me, because Madden is not this hyper-realistic game that it should be by now. And this is very typical wording and marketing for new hardware. How do you get people excited about this? Realism and immersion have been the go-to buzzwords and topics from as long as I can remember, going from PS2 to PS3, PS1 to PS2. These things always bring about this idea that everything's going to be so much more realistic, so much more immersive. And as a hardcore simulation sports gamer, that is what I want to hear: realism, immersion. But I know Madden. We've been down this road. And I know that this is the only time they want to speak directly to the hardcore players that are looking for this Sunday experience. I'd be more excited if this were the middle of a console generation and it was a topic, but it's not. This is the very beginning of a generation. This is the cycle, and it's repeating itself. We'll see if it actually delivers a better experience than on PS4, Xbox One. So, next gen stats. I'll have this article linked down below. Next gen stats are, of course, the information that they've been able to gather by putting the RFID chips in players' shoulder pads, and that's how we know the exact speed of players on their long touchdowns. And there's a lot of cool information that next gen stats captures, and you can find a lot of it on NFL.com. In the article, they mentioned that Next Gen stats equals Next Gen player movement, and that's been a big gripe of mine, that player movement is nowhere near where it should be. You look at other major games, Red Dead, Last of Us, Uncharted, some of the biggest games, one of the things that's always caught my attention is characters move so much more realistically than in Madden. And in a game like Madden, like, characters moving is like the main part of the game. But let's get to the information here. Leveraging the power of NFL Next Gen stats, Next Gen player movement is fueled by real athlete data, route paths, and acceleration rates, allowing the next generation of Madden NFL to deliver the most realistic, authentic, and fluid player movement in franchise history. Expanding on the player archetypes introduced in Madden 21 on the current gen, they have added more animation content and nuance to each archetype on next generation tech, so they will move and feel more differently on the sticks. For example, a big bruising ball carrier will run with a heavier weight and produce more tackle outcomes where he gains extra yards. I feel like this stuff has been the topic of conversation many times as I've gone through news on prior Madden cycles. So I kind of want to skip this part, but they do say that there is unique player movement per archetype for agile ball carriers, agile small, agile tall, bruiser, bruiser quick, and bruiser heavy. I do feel a difference with certain players in Madden currently. For instance, Donovan Jennings to me has always been a player that's just felt differently in my Broncos franchise. He's big, but he also has like great acceleration and speed. So I have noticed a difference between some players, but certainly I think that difference isn't always felt at the point of contact, and that's where I want to see things get better. Basically, in general, at all the skill positions, they're talking about unique player movement for a variety of different archetypes there, along with pass block movement for O-line. And what I want to see is, okay, how does the pocket form? Is there really going to be like pushing defenders off the line or getting pushed back into the pocket more than what we see now? Because that has always been something that I've wanted to see Madden get better with, and we've talked about a lot in the past. Next up, they talk about next gen stats and route running, which has been completely overhauled, they say. Receivers will run actual routes logged by next gen stats real NFL game data. In addition to speed and acceleration rates, the animation engine is also leveraging player-specific route paths from Next Gen stats for individual receivers. For example, the path that Green Bay Packers receiver Davante Adams takes on a deep crossing route on a Sunday afternoon will be the same deep crossing route reflected by Adams in Madden NFL gameplay. Now, I can see how that would work because like the data is there. You can go check out receivers and their route charts and see their actual like route pathing and how they run certain routes. And that would be really cool because yeah, the sameness in animation is not immersive. And I think this would be a good use of that data. I still have questions that could be easily answered by showing like a 5-second clip of raw gameplay of him actually running the route. But I'm like wondering, how does the coach art look pre-play? And I want to see like Adam's deep crossing route compared to somebody else's. If I can get my hands on one of the new consoles and get some gameplay, this is the kind of stuff I'd want to check out. Like next gen stats is what they're talking about. If it delivers, yeah, I am definitely interested and I'd want to test it out. But I wish that if you're going to talk about realism and immersiveness, you have to do it with a better kind of trailer, because that's not the right way to communicate to people who are caring about immersion. We would get way more out of just a plain 2nd and 8, watching Rodgers throw the comeback route they throw 48 times a game to Davante Adams. Like, I want to see that in action. That would answer like every question. It would answer a lot of them at least. It mentions in here that before on the previous gen, receivers ran from one specific point to another specific point at top speed all the time and made very similar cuts, so there was very little difference between players. After on next gen, Player ratings and archetypes will heavily impact the quality and speed of each route, and they will be run as an entire route from start to finish rather than individual portions of a route on previous gen. That could definitely change gameplay. Like, if route running were that different, it would be a pretty serious change to a player like me. Those are the little things I would be looking for in making gameplay more realistic. That's certainly one of them. Next up, I talk about defense. Next Gen Stats doesn't just benefit the offense. They've analyzed the Next Gen Stats data for defensive players in terms of speed, facing direction, and acceleration, so they can make the animation engine provide the appropriate content to make defenders who are backpedaling and strafing much more natural looking and athletic. And in coverage, players will react and break on plays more consistently and predictably. Next Gen Stats also brought improvements to AI pursuit, so that when AI controlled defenders are pursuing a ball carrier, they will now get in better position to make a play or be in a better position for a timely click on for the user to make the play. When it comes to this topic, to me this is way more of an AI issue than an animation issue, which is more the route running, the speed and the crispness of certain routes. Like, that's not an AI thing. But when it comes to coverage, I mean, we all know that these safeties are covering areas of the field that aren't being challenged, and they're just not efficiently playing defense all the time. And Next Gen Stats, I can't see how that fixes those problems. So I don't really know what to take away from this part and it improving defense. Some of these problems here I don't think would take special new data to fix. They've also made something for tackling here. They've made a new tackle prediction and anticipation technology they call Rally. And what that does is not only will you be able to start tackle interactions easier, but you'll see more variety in tackles, improved visual quality in terms of tackle prep and anticipation, and more authentic interactions during impact moments. All I want to know is, will defensive backs start going low when they're taking on running backs? That's what I want to see. Next Gen Stats powered replays. They've added some presentation elements into instant replays, all backed by Next Gen Stats. I could see that being pretty cool if they're talking about, air yards or distance traveled or time to throw. Like, that could be pretty cool. And I could see that being, not as difficult to implement as some of the other things talked about in here. They do have a list of the replay triggers: completed air distance, rushing distance, ball carrier speed, tackle length, and time to sack. And some secondary replay triggers: yards after catch, time to throw, time behind line of scrimmage for rushing plays, broken tackles, yards after contact, run after catch, completed air distance, air yards to sticks, quarterback speed at time of throw, carry distance, distance to end zone, distance from own end zone, and carrying speed. Again, I think those replays could be pretty sweet. I think that they have gotten better creating that logic that gets some of those replays. Like, when I'm in my franchise, a lot of those replays end up being pretty useful. And if they're layering Next Gen Stats on top of that, then I could see that being a good new addition. Not a game-changing one, but a welcome one. Next Gen Play Calling. To provide a solid foundation for the player movement system, they've also made significant updates to the play call system, giving players more control to call the best plays for the right players on every down via the by player play calling. And you can keep track of all your preferred plays on speed dial with the new favorite play marker and playbook tab, which I think would be very nice to have just some of your go-tos for your favorites. Not a huge deal here. Basically, you can pick plays specifically by who you want to get the football in these spots. So it's kind of quicker if you just say, okay, I just want a McCaffrey play here, or need something to go to Dalvin Cook, which is almost the entire Vikings playbook. Additional gameplay improvements. Because Next Gen player movement has had such a significant impact on the pace of play in the Madden NFL 21, here's some other gameplay improvements that come along with the new gameplay system. Pass lead. Next gen stats and player movement opened up the ability to lead receivers on deep routes more effectively. Run game. It's easier to read running lanes and find those satisfying cutback lanes. Hey, if the zone running actually works, I would be really happy. The zone running hasn't been that fun for me, specifically outside zone. I want to be the Vikings here with Dalvin Cook. Outside zone is way more fun on NCAA 14 than any Madden since. Quarterback movement. Movement in and out of the pocket is smooth and athletic. You'll also feel the differentiation in movement all over the field when comparing pocket passers to mobile quarterbacks. That is an essential deal with how many quarterbacks we have in the NFL that are great at maneuvering in the pocket and evading defenders. That hasn't been replicated in a football video game for a long time. And I'm not just talking about like takeoff speed and leaving the pocket. I want to see true evasiveness in the pocket. I'm not sure what we're going to see from it there in Madden 21 Next Gen, but next up, head tracking. Head movement is more realistic for receivers when running routes and for ball carriers in terms of when and where they are looking, making them look more aware of the on-field or more aware of the on-field action. Tackling. It talks about the rally tech. They've also improved gang tackles. Gang tackles will trigger more often with much more variety. They've made improvements to tackle momentum, and it's now much more realistic with direction, weight, and speed of players involved taken into account for tackle selection and post-tackle follow-through. And even defensive users can now interact with gang tackles. That could be cool. I mean, the gang tackling and the dynamic tackling is something that has been lacking for a very long time. Improve pass rush timing. With the passing game moving at a more realistic speed, the pass rush has more of an impact relative to the timing relationship between the quarterback drop back, the depth of the route, and the speed of the incoming pass rushers. And then blazing fast load times. This is basically the one thing I'm very certain is going to be solid for pretty much every game on the new consoles, and a big reason why I want a new one. Just how many minutes do I waste on the laggy dashboard and loading screens? Faster load times powered by next generation tech. There's nothing special here. It's going to be faster. That's all you got to know about it. And that's the end of the article and the information here. And I think, like, yeah, a lot of this sounds phenomenal. I think that the next gen stats, like the data from the real NFL and the way players run routes, the acceleration data you can get from that, the pathing data on certain routes would be useful if you could import it and it seamlessly worked itself into the game. I think there are some big questions I have, because you can't just fix some of these things or add in these things without fixing the total package. And to me, when I think about the AI and how often that lags behind everywhere else in the game, if players are running differently, if animations are so different, is the AI up to par? Because I don't want to play against people. I really don't. I want an authentic user versus CPU experience where I can pause the game and leave and go get pizza and come back and just continue my night. I want to know how the CPU AI performs now. If they have, you know, more abilities here and there's some new data and receivers are running routes differently, are they able to comprehend all this stuff? What are the CPU quarterback tendencies going to be like? And are they going to be able to play at a high level with new stuff in the game? Same thing for AI ball carriers, where in a lot of games, they're not good anymore. They don't take great angles. They don't know how to optimally gain their yardage. I think that's an area of the game that was much stronger well over a decade ago. So from an animation standpoint, I think that we're going to see some improvements, but I would love to test out some of these routes and see how it all plays out. But is the on-field just 60-minute football experience, is it better because of any of this? We'll see. I also have questions about, like, what about your draft classes? Obviously, you have Devontae Adams route data because he's a real player, real good player. And Is it just going to be a lot more generic for players who are drafted in? Will only the base roster feel special in this game? Or is it that we won't be able to tell a big difference on the routes, and this is just more marketing than implementation? We'll have to see. I'm hoping that there are some improvements. I didn't really care for Madden 21 on PS4, Xbox One. Played like 4 or 5 hours of it. Haven't touched it since early access. But I would love to check out what is on the new generation here and to just see what's up like I did at the very beginning of this whole cycle. Not saying I want to make a series necessarily, but if the game is better, then sure, I do. I just want to be able to test it out. So hopefully I can get my hands on one of these systems here. Maybe it'll actually stay in my cart one of these times. I'm refreshing a million times and it'll actually work. Or maybe I just won't get one for a while. That's also possible. But that's going to do it for this video, everybody. What are your expectations? My whole conclusion is that, sure, it sounds good, but I'm just very kind of unsure of if this is really going to be a big deal, if they're going to really nail any of these things, or if it'll just feel like a step in the right direction and the conversation doesn't really change a lot around this game. Leave your thoughts down below in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. If you want to subscribe, I'm not going to stop you from hitting the subscribe button. And I will see you all in the next video, back on Madden 20 with my Broncos franchise. Have a great day, everybody.